Raider Nation, we are back. Eddie Paskal and Jesse Merrick from News 3 LV. And this week, by the way, you're watching and listening to Upon Further Review brought to you by Coors Light. We are doing a defensive six-pack. So last week, we did the offense. We did 6 questions surrounding your 2023 Las Vegas Raiders on the offensive side of the football. This week, all things defense, all things Patrick Graham's crew. So, Jesse, you went last week. I believe you started us off with our first question.
Yes, sir.
So I will do the honors this week. Our first question surrounding the Las Vegas Raiders defense in 2023 is this. Going back to 2022, the tandem of Max Crosby and Chandler Jones had 17 sacks combined. 1-7. Do we think that number goes up or goes down in 2023?
Yeah, diving right into it right
Getting
away.
into
Love
it.
it, man. With Max, obviously, we know he's the Energizer buddy. That guy is going to eat no matter what. I think the number goes up. We saw Chandler get a slow start statistically, and obviously people were kind of going in on the guy, but he was still impactful in other ways. I think we see Chandler jump out to a quicker start, maybe get a couple more sacks there. Obviously, they talk about wanting to win and roll guys out there in waves along the defensive front, but I think we see more out of Chandler. Also, too, there's a rookie in the mix. We'll see what he kind of eats into, but that also breeds some competition there. Because let's be honest, if he takes someone's job, it ain't going to be Max's. So Chandler maybe has a little bit of a fire lit under him. Not that we all know what Chandler can do. He's future Hall of Famer and everything like that. But so no disrespect on him in saying that. But I mean, this is a guy that probably comes in with a little more to be like, hey, okay, yeah, I'm going to help this guy and kind of bring him along. But you bring him in here, I'm going to show you what I can do. So I think there's maybe a little more fire from Chandler. We see him kind of getting in there in the mix early on in the season. We start to see that number go up a bit more. And if it does, that's going to be great for the guys on the back end as well.
Yes, I agree with you. Not great for the sake of debate, but I agree with you. I think that number goes up. And you hit the nail on the head, right? Where Max is going to do what Max does, right? I think we can agree that Max needs to be in that conversation when you talk about the elite edge rushers in the NFL. Crosby, Max needs to be included in every single one of those conversations. But Chandler, you bring up a Chandler, right? And we look at Chandler from a year ago, 4.5 sacks. But I want to focus on this. 4 sacks in his final 4 games.
Yeah.
So, and we have talked about it time and time again. He has talked about it time and time again, the slow start to last year. And there's really no two ways to parse it. It was a slow start. Yeah. But something seemed to click for him. And I'm looking up the numbers. Something seemed to click. And it was that game against the Chargers. The Raiders win 27-20. 3 sacks. And you saw, okay, this is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is the Chandler Jones that we all expected was going to walk into this building and do his thing in the offseason. And that is the Chandler Jones that I think we are going to get this season. Now, I don't know if we're going to get a double-digit sack Chandler Jones, and you bring up a great point about Tyree Wilson and the impact that he is going to have on this defense this season. But I think we look at 17 from a year ago, and even if Max says it goes down to hypothetically 11 sacks, right? If you get 11 for Max, I am pretty confident sitting here today that the sack number for Chandler Jones is going to be north of 4.5.
Yeah.
So I think if you were to ask me right now, 17 is the line. Do we feel it's going to be a bigger number or a smaller number? Sitting here right now today, I think it's a bigger number.
Yeah, run to the bank on the over on that one, right? Definitely on that. I think, too, just looking at the schedule, I was pulling it up here, and obviously, they start against Denver. That's an offensive line that has been kind of shaky. New system. They're kind of learning things, so maybe he's able to jump out of the gates there. Then you go to Buffalo, but then you got Pittsburgh, who's got a second-year quarterback in there, maybe still trying to find his footing. So maybe he kind of starts to break through a bit. So I think there's some spots in here where he's going to have some opportunities to get there, specifically against the O-lines that he's going to be facing as well. So I think that kind of bodes well for him in terms of increasing those stats.
And this is more of a question, I guess, philosophical question, and you would know better than I. Again, we'll talk about this more during the Raiders Training Camp podcast. By the way, we are back. Like, subscribe, make sure that you're rocking with us in just a few short weeks because Jesse and I are going to do the entirety of camp. Woo. No days off. We're grinding. But I wonder, and we talk about the Tyree Wilson of it all, right? And the expectation of what Tyree's going to bring to the table. If you're Patrick Graham, and this is more Jesse X's and O's that I'm asking you, who do you think is more likely in a kind of unique package to shift to the inside, right? Because I don't see a world really where they ask Max to shift inside. But if you want to have Max, Tyree, and Chandler all on the field, all at the same time, all getting after the quarterback, who's more likely to make that move on the inside?
And I think that's something we do see. So that's one thing I've been talking about with Tyree is so many people asking, what kind of role does he carve out for himself? I think he is involved with those other 2 guys out on the field, so we start seeing him out there. I think of those 2, I would definitely want to put Chandler on the inside just because, look, I mean, the kid's kind of trying to get his feet wet and play in the NFL. Like, Chandler's been there, done that. Not something he's done a whole lot of, but I would put him in there, and feel a little bit more comfortable about it. Having said that, I think maybe it's something we see more of where either Chandler or Tyree lined up more as that outside edge rusher, the outside linebacker type of position, and Chandler on the edge. I think we see, Chandler on the edge in the defense with his hand.
Yeah.
Is what I mean. So I think we see more of that. But if you're talking about moving someone inside, to me, it's Chandler Jones going inside. And then that's a scary thought with just the purely from an athleticism standpoint, with Max on one end and Tyree on the other. I mean, that's not going to be fun for quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're a center or you're an interior lineman and you're looking up and you see Chandler Jones, what are we listing Chandler at these days? All 6'5" of him and the arms that seemingly go on forever. Like, that is a scary proposition for any interior lineman.
On top of that, too, like, everyone talks about with Chandler, like, the thing for him is that, like, he's an unconventional rusher. Like, the way that he rushes, it's like, what the heck is going on here, And so you do that and move that inside against guys that aren't used to facing a guy like that, like, that's going to cause problems. And so that's where I think it will be interesting to see how Patrick Graham uses him along with Tyree and Max.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a long time since the Raiders have had a trio of pass rushers, this explosive, this dynamic, and with the potential that they have. And in trio, can you say in tandem when it's three? I don't know if you can. I don't know. I think tandem's two. In trio, in concert.
I think it's fun.
Whatever. I'm changing the English language.
In trio.
Exactly. In trio. But I'm really excited to see what the three of them can do together, because I think, like to your point, there are certainly going to be moments in a game where you see all three of those dudes on the field, on the defensive line together. Who's got their hand in the dirt? Who doesn't? It's going to be one of the more intriguing things to see that likely we probably won't see during the preseason. But once we get to the regular season and really go through the marathon that is that 19 weeks, that's going to be a fun thing to keep an eye on. But Jesse, kick us off. Question number 2, what you got?
All right, let's get it. So I'm going to move. So we talked about the defensive line. I'm going to move now back to the guys on the second level. Who emerges in that linebacking core as the leader there? We obviously saw that they said that Divine Diablo was wearing the green dot here in the offseason stuff. So to me, really, I think it's a battle in terms of a leadership battle, if we call it, between Spillane and Divine. But who do you think it is?
Again, I mean, something that we'll have a much better idea of, in a month and a half, whatever it is. I think my gut tells me Spillane right now.
Me too.
Now I think Divine certainly will be given every opportunity to earn his reps, to earn a bigger role. But I think you look at Robert Spillane, it's a dude who's done it in the NFL. And I think with Divine, all of the potential in the world is there. All of the physical attributes are there. I mean, we saw him during the offseason program. I mean, the guy physically looks fantastic. Yeah. He looks the role of what you want in kind of that new age linebacker, right? But Spillane has done there, or excuse me, he's been there and he's done that, right? So, in one hand, you have a guy who's a veteran in the league who perhaps the ceiling isn't as high as Divine, but you know exactly what you're getting. And then on the other hand, you have a guy with all the potential in the world, but you haven't seen it yet on a consistent basis.
Exactly.
So I think for me, right now, as we record this, Robert Spillane is kind of my guess for that question.
It's a bummer that we agree again.
Why is it like this? Why is it like this?
But and that's again, like you said, no knock on Divine.
None at all.
He, like I noted, he is rocking the green dot here in the offseason and all that stuff. But the pads have yet to come on. And so Spillane is that guy that comes in, and a lot of people say, he's that thumper. That run stuffer. But I think he's a guy that comes in and impresses people with what he can do in coverage as well. You go looking through his grades here in 2020 and 2021. He allowed a 53.5 completion rate in 2020 and a 66.7 completion rate in 2021. I think he's got more coverage chops than people really think. He didn't allow a touchdown in both of those years. So 2 years that he hasn't allowed a touchdown in coverage as the primary defender, at least in coverage there. So I think he's a guy that has a little more layers to his game, than people really think. And like you said, he's been there. He's done that. He's taking that role that we saw Denzel Perryman of that, like, see ball, hit ball, heat-seeking missile type of guy. And whoever does that, especially in the linebacking core, like, that just commands respect and attention, And so that's where I think we see him kind of win his teammates over, being that guy that just goes out there and lays dudes out. And then I think he does earn the green dot. He said that the staff told him he'd have an opportunity to compete for that. So I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we can even have like a legitimate conversation about having two guys that you feel pretty good about in that role, I think is a great sign for the Raiders defense. But we talked about the experience, Jesse, right? Where, Robert Spillane, 52 career games, right? Appeared in 52. Divine, 25.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy that has more than twice the amount of NFL experience. And look, that's not to say Divine can't get that experience, but as we sit here right now getting ready for training camp, Robert Spillane has appeared in more than twice the amount of games that Divine Diablo has. So I think Divine will be given every opportunity to kind of find that role, to earn that role. And look, if Divine isn't the dude wearing the green dot, that's not to say he's not going to be on the football field, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a dude, and we talk about it, the freak athleticism, the guy who is very much the 2023 version of what you want a linebacker in the NFL to look like. He's going to be on the field. He's going to get his chances to go make plays. Whether he's wearing the green dot or he's not wearing the green dot, we'll figure that out over the next couple months.
Yeah.
But I think whether he is or whether he isn't, this is a dude in Divine Diablo who's going to make an impact on the Raiders defense in 2023.
Yeah, look, he's the fact that they even gave him the green dot in the offseason, and like, yeah, you can make the argument of like, well, who are you going to give it to at this time of year? Because obviously Spillane is, joining this team, and Divine had been here, and he's kind of really the guy in that crew so far, at this point. But he has the comfortability in this scheme, so the fact that he does that and knows what he's doing back there is already massive. So you bring Spillane in, like you said, whoever loses that battle, like, you still feel comfortable putting both of them out there. And like you said, Divine too, what you want out of a linebacker, in the NFL right now. I'm excited to see him and kind of how he improves his coverage ability as well, because that's obviously something that the Raiders need out of a linebacker.
And real quick before we move on, I think one thing that if you're a fan of the Raiders, when you look at Robert Spillane's career stats, this is what you got to love. These are the games that he's played since he entered the NFL in 2018. 2, 8, 12, 14, 16. This is a guy who has seen the role get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This isn't a guy who came in as a rookie and played 13 games. The next year he played 7, right? This is a dude who has earned everything that he's had in this league and has taken advantage of every opportunity. And because of that, the piece of the pie has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm excited to see really what both of those guys have, but it'll be a fun battle to watch.
And I think that's something too. You got to give it like a hat tip to the staff too. There's so many guys that you can say that the arrow is trending up on them that they've signed or brought in that kind of seem like, or at least are shaping up to be like kind of interesting and real shrewd contract moves and players in the building that when you dive deeper into the numbers, there's like more layers to their game than I think the casual fan would realize. So that's the thing. I'm excited to see a lot of different guys that are similar to that, where the arrow is trending up for them with this Raiders team.
And that's why Dave Ziegler and the boys down the hall are making the big bucks. And you and I are sitting here in this beautiful studio just talking about it, chopping it all up. But question 3, we're going in order, right? We started with the defensive line.
Yeah.
We moved back to the linebackers. Now let's shift back even further to the back end and look at the safeties. One safety in particular, Marcus Epps, a guy that comes in, priority kind of free agent for the silver and black. He enters now. He joins from the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. What do we think that he is going to bring to this group in 2023?
Man, I mean, this guy comes in being able to stop the run, and also a veteran leadership on the back end too. This is a big one, for that group as a whole. Trayvon Merrick as well needs to take a step forward, obviously.
Yes.
But having a guy who's kind of been there, has got the experience, that's definitely big. But like I noted, I mean, Epps comes in and he's kind of your run stuffer there. This guy played the 4th most snaps among safeties, at over 1,200 snaps. But then you come in and look at his run defense grade. He was ranked 11th in stopping the run. The guy racked up 88 tackles. That's 7th overall. I mean, pretty good numbers when you look in that sense. And also, too, look, the coverage numbers in terms of the stats aren't amazing, but also when you look at the catches that he actually allowed, he's 6th, and then for yards allowed 4th. Like, those are good numbers there. So, maybe his coverage grade wasn't the greatest in the world, but the numbers themselves speak to him being efficient in the passing game as well. So I'm excited to see kind of what role he carves out for himself and what he provides to that group.
Yeah, I think that he does his final form, right? The role that we ask of him. Again, we'll figure out over the next couple of months. But I think that he brings, 2 things to the table. 1, he's a veteran presence who's been productive in the NFL. And 2, he's a guy that knows how to win. He is a guy that was a part of arguably the best defense in the NFL a year ago. And he wasn't a guy that was sitting on the sidelines watching those dudes get after it. He was on the field and kind of learning and dissecting and figuring out how to be a key cog in this defensive beast for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm not a huge guy in kind of talking about the translation of, what he did a year ago with a group of guys that aren't here, how will that translate to what he does here in a new spot? But I think when we look at what he has done, and we talk about he's won, But not only that, he has had a chance to learn, to understand, to bring a different perspective to this group now in 2023. So yeah, I mean, I think that what the final form ends up being, what Patrick Graham asks of him in specifics, is something that we'll figure out during training camp and throughout the preseason. But this is a guy that if you're a fan of the silver and black, he's a really fun, shiny toy that is now in the toy box here.
A guy that's been on a solid team, like you said, been there, done that, knows how to win. And to your point about Spillane, in terms of the games played numbers going up, well, okay, in 2019, his rookie year with the Minnesota Vikings, played in 8 games, and then from there, the rest of the way with the Eagles, 14, 16, and 17 games. So again, another guy arrow trending up, so really excited to see what he can do back there with them. The biggest thing that they need out of everybody in their secondary really is just ball production. So is this a guy that
make plays?
Exactly, that can make plays, that can go down there being more of that quote unquote run stuffer type of guy? Can he go in there and separate a carrier from the ball itself? How many times can he get them to put the ball on the ground? That's what I think is going to be intriguing. Because in this defense, if things are all going perfect, you got Trayvon Merrick back there roaming around playing that center field role, and Marcus Epps running around, flying, hitting people, kind of being that Spillane of the secondary.
Yeah, and I think that really, stating the obvious a little bit, what really kind of differentiates the good defensive players in the NFL from the really good, elite, outstanding ones, it's they figure out a way to take the ball away, right?
Yeah.
You look at guys, Jalen Ramsey at his peak, right? Darrelle Revis back in the day. Those are guys that, they were really solid in coverage. They did their thing. But you would wake up and it would feel like every day when you're watching SportsCenter, every Sunday, there's a highlight of Darrelle Revis, the ball in their hands, like, hang on, I know you're a safety, but why are you running towards the end zone, right? And so certainly the Raiders need a little more of that dynamic on the back end, right? They need it from everyone.
Yeah.
But I think on the back end in particular, to have some production in that realm, I think would be huge for this group.
Oh, it'd be massive. I mean, again, like that just, we talk about the pass rush and everything working in tandem. I mean, you get a guy that you can just trust, you don't have to think about back there. That makes everybody's life so much easier. And so a guy coming in here that's been there and done that can help kind of calm the waters a bit and maybe take some of the pressure off of a guy like Trayvon Merrick as he continues to improve and grow in this defense as he, again, like we said, enters a big offseason for him. So Marcus Epps is a guy that I think that's going to come in and can pay dividends for a lot of the guys around him as well.
It's interesting, too, and I just kind of had this thought is, last week you and I talked about the offense, right? And you and I kind of looked back to when we were going through training camp 2022, and the offensive line, we had so many questions about it, and that was kind of the big, okay, what are the Raiders going to do at A, B, C, D, and E?
Yeah.
I think going into this year, I think that's kind of the safety group, the back end of the defense is kind of that for me, right?
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about Nate Hobbs and some of the DBs in here in just a second, but, I mean, really, the safety's like, we come in now, and there's so many different combinations, and I don't know if any of them would really surprise me.
Yeah, no, same with me. I mean, because there are so many pieces kind of in the mix back there. We talk about the safeties as I pull up the depth chart here that I just deleted. But there's so many pieces that you can kind of mix and match. Chris Smith, a guy that's going to be interesting back there. What kind of role does he carve out for himself?
Isaiah Polamau, a guy that we saw a little bit of last year. Chris Smith, a rookie. Roderick Teamer, a dude who's a veteran now in the NFL. I mean, there are a lot of guys in this group and guys that have either played a lot of football or guys that you say, hey, I want to see them play more football. So a really, really intriguing group, and certainly no shortage of storylines there as we carry on throughout the offseason and ultimately training camp. But Jesse, what do we got? Question 4 of the 6-pack.
All right, so we're talking about the secondary. That's where I'm going to keep it. For this one, I want to know who wins the starting role opposite of Nate Hobbs, assuming that he stays outside. I think we can all be in agreement that he's going to stay outside, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think so.
Yeah.
Question mark?
He'll
Probably.
play both.
Yeah.
The majority of his snaps outside.
I would agree. So who is his running mate on the outside, man?
Yeah.
And we talk about having a lot of good pieces and a lot of intrigue. When I was going through this earlier, I think I'm going with my first gut. I'm going to go with the first kind of that's the guy feeling that I had. And that guy is friend of the program, Brandon Faison.
There you go.
I think Brandon brings a lot of things to the table. I think physically speaking, he's a tall, rangy corner, 6'2", 200 pounds. Like, this is a guy who can do that, who brings that to the table. But a veteran in the NFL, a guy who has been at a handful of different places, now on his second tour of duty with the silver and black, and really the owner of one of my favorite becoming a Raiders story, a story for another day. But I think that his experience in the NFL in general, the physical tools that he brings, the demeanor that he has on and off the field, I think, is very becoming of a cornerback. And I think that if you were to ask me to right now, he's going to be the guy.
Yeah, hey, that's a good one. He's obviously one of the guys in the mix, Brandon Faison, David Long Jr., and Duke Shelley. But for me, it's the last guy that I listed. I think Duke Shelley locks down that spot. Yeah. He comes in, you guys know I bring up the PFF numbers a lot, and I always say you got to take them with a grain of salt, but I add a lot of grain of salt in there when I talk about the PFF numbers here. But this is a guy that comes in when you dive into it. Looks like he could be a solid pickup for them. Another one of those kind of arrow trending up guys. When he played with the Vikings, with the Bears, they had him primarily in the slot, and he was kind of like, it wasn't anything amazing. But then they moved him outside, and he really shined and took advantage of that opportunity. He had an 86.4 PFF coverage grade, which ranks third in the NFL, only to Sauce Gardner and Patrick Surtain II. I'd say that's pretty good.
Pretty good company.
Right? There's more, though. But wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more.
On top of that, he had an 84.5 PFF man coverage grade, which was the second best in the NFL, only to Marlon Humphrey. And then, but wait, there's even more. The kid had some ball production, 11 pass breakups and interception, and he allowed a 59.6 quarterback rating, which was sixth in the NFL. Now, they're just stats. Stats can be tweaked to however the heck you want. But I think this guy brings some interesting elements to the table. His man coverage, obviously, is what shines, and probably a big reason why they brought him in here. And the fact that as soon as he moved outside, he really took that opportunity and ran with it and changed as an NFL player. He's, again, another one of those guys that I think is on the rise that could be an interesting pickup for the Raiders here.
So philosophical question again then, right?
Yeah.
In this world where Duke Shelley and Nate are your two kind of base corners,
yeah.
Neither of those dudes kind of, the picture of the 6'4" rangy corner, right? Nate listed at 6 foot. Duke Shelley, if I'm reading this correctly, 5'8" on the Raiders.com website.
There you go. ESPN gave him an extra inch.
Yeah, hey, good agent, dude. If you're Patrick Graham, do you have any pause, any hesitation throwing out your two corners that are going to be on the field a ton, and neither of them are kind of the picture of physical dominance, if you will?
No, totally. I see where you're coming with that. And that's kind of today's NFL, is you see those longer, rangy corners are the ones that are having more success. And so I definitely would. I totally get it. But also maybe see who you're matching up against. But a guy like Keenan Allen comes to mind. Obviously, you would want probably a bigger-bodied guy like that. And maybe that's where we see more matchup specific, guys that slot into the lineup there, not slot specifically, but just slot into the lineup to cover a certain guy like him, or these big bodied receivers that they will see from time to time. But also too, like, no matter how big or small you are, like, again, we look at Jacoby Myers, and I'm just going off the top here without looking at him, but I think he goes like 6'1", and his contested catch rate.
Yeah, 100%.
Was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, like,
I mean, also not to be this guy. You either got the dog in you, you don't got the dog in you, right? I mean, you could be 6'7" and built like a transformer, but if you don't have it, you don't have it.
And the thing too is, like, these smaller guys, you usually see that, like, they're a little stickier. They're able to move and wiggle and have the loose hips a little more. So in coverage against these guys, they may not have that size to where it's like, oh, you just barely put a hand up and you break it up. But they could be right there with those guys and in their grill. And it's tough to make a contested catch when a guy's right up on you. So I put some stock in the height, weight, speed thing. But also at the same time, I'm like, not going to lose my mind if you got a couple small guys out there that get the job done.
100%. And I will say one kind of addition to that before we move on. Keep an eye on Sam Webb. Right,
yeah.
We talk about kind of those big-bodied corners, right? Sam Webb coming in at, give me one sec. I think it was 6'2". I don't want to take an inch away from Sam.
Yeah.
Yes, listed at 6'2", and again, just under 200 pounds. So we talk about more of that kind of prototypical, corner physique, like a Brandon Faison, someone like that. Sam Webb, a guy who certainly had his moments in 2023.
Yeah.
A guy who had some moments that I'm sure he would want to get better from, he improves from in 2023. But a guy who certainly had moments in flash and said, hey, I belong here in the NFL.
Look, as an undrafted guy to work your way onto the field and get that done,
I love those dudes, man.
Huge. That counts for something. Like, a lot of times when I'm looking into these battles, like, I try and look and see where guys were drafted or if they were drafted at all. And, like, I put a lot of weight on guys who were undrafted that fought and battled and earned a spot on the field, because, like, that is hard to do. You come in literally the bottom of the depth chart and you go and win your spot.
And candidly, coaches you got to give them a reason to keep you around.
Yeah.
Right? And I know it's a little different now with the way that the roster management and the cut days and all that is. And kudos to the NFL for kind of changing it and having it the way that it is now, which is the one big cut. But all the same, I mean, if you're an undrafted guy, you gotta earn your spot every single day, because oftentimes you're ranking guys 1 to 90. You're guy number 87. You're guy number 88. You're guy number 89. Hey, if something comes up, if there's a surprise cut from Team X during training camp, all right, well, I'm going to look for the undrafted guy that we don't owe a lot of money financially to.
Yeah.
And we're going to give someone else who we know who's been there, done that in the league, the chance to go earn that job.
And it's also hard too, because like you fall prey to like the narrative, the not going drafted.
Yeah.
I know everyone says like, oh, well, once you're here, it doesn't really matter.
It kind of matters.
Yeah, it's still kind of in the back of your head. So like you're also fighting that with the coaching staff, because these guys are also human. They're gonna be like you said, you look at the contracts and everything. You're like, well, hey, we can afford to get this guy like out of here. So I have so much respect for the guys
100%.
that claw and scratch their way onto a roster, and when they get that opportunity, they succeeded in it. And Sam Webb was definitely a guy that did just that.
Put it this way before we go to question 5.
Yeah.
Tyree Wilson can have a lot more bad days and not be losing sleep than a guy who's an undrafted free agent.
His check's still gonna clear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That direct deposit has hit, brother. Question 5 in the 6-pack. Okay. So bear with me here, because you and I were going through this when we were prepping. The Raiders drafted 6 defensive rookies in 2023. 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Take Tyree Wilson, the aforementioned, out.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to play in this
He's going
game.
to the bank. That's what
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's busy. He's making sure that that the zeros and the commas and all that, he's busy.
Yeah.
I'm giving you 5 defensive rookies. I am giving you – who am I giving you? I'm giving you Christopher Smith. I'm giving you Jacorian Bennett, Amari Burney, Byron Young, and Nesta Jade Silvera.
Yeah.
Of those 5, who makes the biggest impact on this defense in 2023?
Well, here, before I give you my number 1, here's 3 that I'm just really intrigued by.
I'm only giving you 5.
No, I'm just saying that I'm intrigued by, and I'll pick the one.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll give you a real answer. There's 3 guys that I'm really intrigued by.
All right.
Christopher Smith, Jacorian Bennett. Okay, I lied, actually. Byron Young and Amari Burney. Those guys to me.
That's 4.
I know, that is 4. I really cheated. I'm sorry. That's bad. But Amari Burney, I'm really excited just watching his tape. Also, shameless plug, I'm a Gators fan too, so that kind of helps. But this kid was all over the place. The ball production was off the charts.
Yeah.
Having said that, to me, it's Jacorian Bennett, just because you watch the tape of what he did against Ohio State, and that guy is there battling with those receivers, and those are some of the best receivers in the college game, man. So rising to the occasion in that sense, you have to love that. Also a guy that doesn't my thing with that is he's not going to shy away from the fact of that there's competition, you know. So definitely going to be excited to see what he can do. He's explosive, and it's just that sticky man coverage guy, brings a bit of versatility, but has that kind of chip on his shoulder. Also too, of his running mate that also got drafted out of Maryland, goes later than he does, so he probably thinks, hey, I got a little something to prove, show you that I am actually the top dog here.
Yeah, and we talk about, we're talking about height, weight, speed guys, right? I mean, Jacorian Bennett is a guy who's going to play bigger, and he actually is. We've heard that from a lot of folks. He's physical, to your point, isn't going to shy away from contact, isn't going to shy away from the moment, right? He seems like the kind of dude, and we haven't had a ton of time to spend with the rookies thus far. A lot of that will come when we get to training camp. But in just hearing his media sessions, even going back to when he was in college, this is not a guy who's going to be shook by anything, right?
No.
So if he looks up one day and Keenan Allen is looking him in the eyes, this is not a young fellow who is going to be intimidated by that. This is not a guy whose heart is going to skip a beat. No. He's like, this is a dude. I'm a dude. Let's go to work and see what happens at the end of this play. So yeah, great call on Jacorian Bennett
on all 5 of them.
Yes, I am going to go. I'm going to go with Christopher Smith the second. We were talking about earlier, right? The multitude of versions of formations that this back end of the Raiders defense could look like in 2023, right?
Yeah.
You got Trayvon, you got Marcus Epps. Well, you also have a guy like Christopher Smith II, a guy who, very similar to Marcus Epps, has won a ton of football games. This dude has won and won and won. And he is a guy that I think is going to be given the opportunity to earn a role. What that role looks like in 2023 remains to be seen, right? Whether that is hey, I'm a guy you can't take off the field kind of guy, or I have a package, or I come in these select situations. He's a guy I think is going to end up playing significant football for the Las Vegas Raiders. He's a guy that I'm excited about, a mature young guy who comes in with, again, kind of a chip on your shoulder and an understanding of hey, this is what I bring to the table, and this is the best. I'm looking to be the best version of myself. But I think he, right now, give me Christopher Smith II, outside of Tyree Wilson, of course, as the Raiders' defensive rookie that makes the biggest impact on this team in 2023.
I mean, Dave said when they drafted him, he got a couple texts. It was like, oh, man, you got a good one.
Yeah.
And so that I'm excited to see, what he can do and kind of what he turns into in that sense. He, to me, kind of is like Renfro. kind of seemed like he was in college forever.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what I think with him.
Well, it's because we see them in these big games week after week, year after year after year.
Yeah, and that counts for something when you get to the league. I mean, that is huge to be in those positions because it's not new for you. It's not like, oh man, you know, like you said, oh, we got you know, some of these big time dogs right across from me. What's gonna happen here? Or like it's a clutch situation. Like they've been there, done that. They've got the muscle memory in those spots. So I'm excited to see what he can do as well. Another guy that was very productive and you know, maybe a bit undersized, but his coverage skills are 100% there. And like, look, as a safety, you got to be that last line of defense. So I'm excited to see what he can do back there as well. One guy too, like I'm just gonna cheat and kind of talk about a couple of guys.
Sure, go
Sorry,
for
as
it.
this thing goes off the rails, but like Byron Young, another guy that I'm really interested to see where he kind of fits into the mix of things here. He comes into me with a great mindset. He's like, you know, at Alabama, you had to earn the right to rush the passer. Like, so this is a guy that's obviously going to come in here and do just that. But he concentrated a lot on stuffing the run at Alabama till he got that opportunity to rush the passer. So I'm sure he's going to come in and try and plug the middle a bit more in that sense. And then when he does get his opportunities to rush the passer, I'm real curious to see what he does in terms of, you know, adding that pressure up the middle that we know is, you know, so devastating against quarterbacks.
100%. And before you bring us home with question 6, Jesse, can we agree that Tyree Wilson going to be the most impactful Raiders rookie?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I think
on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. And if he's not, I think that's a win, you know, and I don't mean that 100%. In a bad way.
No,
like,
I
you know, because then it's like, oh, then that means the Raiders hit on someone later on in the draft. But I do think he will be the most impactful because I think we'll see him out there probably in the best situation to succeed in terms of being surrounded by, you know, Max and Chandler, and he's learning from two of the best in the biz as well. So I think we'll see some interesting things from him as he continues to grow and, you know, get healthy and all that stuff. I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, where I think he's going to be put in a position to succeed pretty early on.
No,
I don't think he's going to be asked to do too much. I think he's going to be asked to do an appropriate amount. And then we talked about, when we were talking last week about the Michael Mayer experience, and the version of Michael Mayer that we see week 1 is going to be different than the version we see week 18. I think the same thing is going to be is going to fall true for Tyree Wilson, where the version we see from him in the season opener is going to be a lot different than come December and January. And hopefully that role gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all three of those guys, those big dogs on the defensive line, are eaten. Yeah,
100% agree, man. So as we move forward here now, speaking of, you know, in terms of the intriguing guys, the depth guys, I'm talked about Jacorian Bennett. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more as well now. For me, what is the most intriguing depth battle to you in terms of a guy that's not a starter but will probably play some significant minutes for this team? And so for me, it's the slot corner spot. Does Jacorian Bennett win his way into the mix there in the slot? As I noted, kid is athletic as can be, runs a 4.3 40, had 24 total pass breakups and 5 interceptions in 2 years at Maryland. Like I noted, the tape was great. No moment is going to be too big for him when he gets here on this stage in the NFL and camp.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I am going to shift a little closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think one battle that, and you and I were talking about this, one battle where I think we're not collectively, and I say we, the general Raiderdom, aren't talking about. I'm really, really excited to see what this defensive tackle situation looks like in 2023, right? Because the Raiders have drafted 4 defensive tackles in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Jerry Tillery is, you know, I think had a really nice kind of small sample size for the Raiders a year ago. Bilal Nichols was a priority free agent a few years ago. You have a lot of really quality pieces now in the middle.
Yeah.
And how does that all shake out? So I think for me, that is a depth battle, but it's also who's the starter battle too. Like that is just to me an incredibly captivating group of guys, a group of really talented guys, and I cannot wait to see what Patrick Graham ultimately ends up deciding to do with the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Byron Young coming in and you know, wanting to earn that right to be out on the field, but there's also, like you said, a couple of guys they drafted last year, Nero Farrell Jr. and Matthew Butler. Like, how much is that step that they take from year 1 to year 2? You know, so many times we talk about these guys, once they learn how to be a pro, year 2 is when they really show what they can be. Like, so this is an interesting camp for these guys, an interesting offseason. Like, I'm interested to see what they look like when they come back, when they throw the pads on, when they actually start hitting, how disruptive those guys can be. That's going to be fun, man. And Jerry Tillery is an intriguing piece too, you know, because he's such that guy that's like that height, weight, you know, massive frame, all those different things. I mean, the Raiders' defensive line with Max, with Chandler, with Jerry, Bilal, I know is a little bit on the shorter side if I remember right.
Yep.
But like just when you just look at Max, you look at Jerry, you look at Tyree and Chandler, like they're going to be that team like walking off the bus. You're like, whoa, this is a basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I mean, they're all going to look like stretch 4s.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so that to me is going to be a really, I mean, a very intriguing battle. But I think that if we go into camp, and I'm sure you and I will discuss this ad nauseum during the Raiders Training Camp podcast, but I think that if you were to say, hey, circle 2 guys that need to have good training camps, that I really want to see put their best foot forward, to me, 2 of those guys are Neil Farrell and Matthew Butler, right? Yeah. I mean, because if you're sitting where they're sitting, you say, okay, we had rookie seasons that perhaps weren't the most highlight-filled. Like, there were moments, but, we didn't see a ton of action. And now I'm going to look ahead. I'm going to look to April, and my team drafted 2 more guys that do what I do. I think that's. I think those are 2 guys that we're going to see the best version of Butler and Farrell in 2023. And early in camp, they're going to have to put their best foot forward.
I would agree 100% on that. Another guy that you got to look out for, Amik Robertson. How much does he kind of say, all right, hey, you draft this Ja'Cory Bennett kid who's a savage.
Yeah.
Amik also has a pretty good tape if you go back and look at college.
Yeah.
The big thing for him is the consistency. Mm-hmm. Can he do that? And so this, I think, is a big camp for him. He's got to be coming in, licking his chops, saying, all right, it's time for me to show these guys what I can do. So I'm excited to see him kind of go out there and do his thing.
And let's not forget that a year ago, and I don't want to use kind of a blanket term, but Amik was kind of a forgotten man in that secondary group.
No, he was.
Like when you were doing your 53-man projections at the start of camp, I don't know if there are a lot of people that had Amik Robertson on that piece of paper. Right? And now you shift forward to the end of the year, and you're like, this dude played a lot of football.
He did. Came through big moments, too.
We now go to training camp 2023, and he's in the same position he was a year ago, where people are like, I don't know, let's see what Meek's got. And so he's a guy that he's going to have to every single day go out there and prove it and say, I deserve a spot on this 53, and I'm going to take it from somebody.
Yeah, and I think Amik is one of those guys that thrives in that position. Mm-hmm. There's certain guys that they like when you kind of discount them and kind of be like, forget about this guy. I think Amik likes that because he likes playing with that chip on his shoulder. So that's one of those things where I'm excited to see how guys respond, and I think that's a spot that he's comfortable in, being that guy that's kind of counted out. Yeah,
and I think just in a general sense, before we get out of here, I'm excited to see what year 2 of this Patrick Graham system looks like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a transformational, oh my God, what did we see? Yeah. What is going on? But I think really what we're looking for is marked improvement at all 3 levels. And I think we're going to get that, right? I think that coming into camp, this is a more talented defense than a year ago. I think the guys that are coming back clearly have a better idea of what the expectations are, what the goal is, what some of those kind of idiosyncrasies are to make this defense go from, a 60-mile-an-hour car to an 80-mile-an-hour car. Mm-hmm. So I think that really seeing that, like I said, not that gradual improvement, but that defined, definitive, they were here last year, they're here now. I think that is going to be exciting.
Also, too, I mean, for the simple fact, there's so much talk about offensively, the way that they brought in guys that are scheme fits and stuff like that. The same thing happened on the defensive end of the ball as well. So they're bringing in guys that can come in and toe the line. Marcus Epps, you go and get a Spillane, and this is another year for them looking at this offense. I mean, not only did the players have a full offseason, but the coaching staff did 100%. Too.
And very little coaching turnover, too, on the staff, which I think is important to bring up.
Which is massive. So, that helps with them, too. And for them, they're learning what these guys do best, too. So, they're a little more comfortable with the players and what they can ask them to do. So, I would imagine we only see things kind of going up. It can only kind of get better from here in terms of the comfortability factor and knowing what they've got in the mix here and the guys that they understand what they can do, to improve this defense, because we all know it needs some work.
Agreed, 100%. And speaking of guys that are improving, guys that are getting better, you and I, right? Yeah. We are our first version, our episode 1 of the Raiders Training Camp podcast we joke about this every year, right? By the end of the season, right? By the time the regular season starts, you and I are in a great groove. Episode 7 is fantastic. And you're like, all right, well, I'll see you in 11 months. Let's do it again. But it's going to be exciting. I'm stoked to have you back in the mix. It is going to be great. Yeah. But outside of the Raiders Training Camp podcast, Jesse, what do you have cooking that the people need to be watching out for?
Man, just all of our coverage, as we do get closer to camp, on News 3. We'll be talking a lot of that. Obviously, the Aces, keeping it all in the family.
Absolutely.
They're making their run. They have been playing outside of their minds. They lose a game against Connecticut, and they just roll, since then. So we'll be covering them a lot. I'm really excited to be able to dive into them. It's shout out to the Golden Knights. So cool that they won, but it's tough because you end up playing that game where you're like, we can't cover the Aces as much because we're so into the Knights at this point. I'm so fired up to dive into the Aces and give them the due that they need because their team, obviously Savages, look like they could be repeating again. So we'll have a lot of coverage from them on News 3.
Absolutely. And in just a few weeks, dude, like we said, Raiders Training Camp Pod, we are back. We are doing it. Season 3. Big shout out to everyone that helps us put that together. And man, it's going to be here before you know it. So, but speaking of things in the short term, though, you and I will be back next week breaking down, breaking down special teams, Jesse. I cannot wait. It's been an interesting offseason for my guys, for Daniel Carlson and AJ Cole. So, yeah, no shortage of intriguing storylines there. I cannot wait. Resident special teams Eddie's putting that hat back on. We're going to work. That'll be next week. So, for Eddie Paskal, my guy Jesse Merrick, Ray Behind the Glass, everyone at Silver and Black Productions, thank you. And as I said, we will see you guys next week, same time, same place, to break down all things special teams on our final 6-pack episode of Upon Further Review.